The night was heavy with silence, the kind that wrapped around a man's chest until he forgot how to breathe. The old rancher, Cole Maddox, stood in the doorway of his barn, rain running down his hat brim, watching the figure kneeling in the mud. She was shivering, her dress torn, her hair matted against her face. When she looked up at him, her eyes held no fear, only a plea. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "Ich flehe dich, mach einfach, schnell." He froze. Not because of her words, but because of what they meant. She wasn't begging for mercy. She was asking for an end. Cole had seen death before, war, storms, cattle drives gone wrong, but never had it knelt before him wearing the face of someone so young, so broken. He stepped forward slowly, the mud sucking at his boots. "What happened to you, miss?" he asked, his voice gravelly from years of dust and solitude. She shook her head. "Doesn't matter. Just, please, don't let him find me." Her shoulders shook as she sobbed, and in the flickering lantern light, he saw the bruises along her arms. Old, purple fading to yellow. A trail of running from something cruel. Cole knelt beside her, his knees sinking into the wet ground. "Ain't no one dyin' on my land," he said softly. "Not tonight." Her breath caught, confusion breaking through her despair. She looked at him as if he were a ghost of kindness she'd forgotten existed. He offered her his hand. "You come inside. I got a fire. You need rest more than you need quittin'." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then her hand, cold and trembling, found his. He helped her up, wrapped his coat around her, and led her toward the dim light of the cabin. Inside, the warmth of the hearth painted her face in gold. She sat near the fire, her eyes darting toward the door with every gust of wind. Cole poured her a mug of coffee, set it before her, and waited. "My name's Cole," he said quietly. "This is Maddox Ranch. Ain't much, but it's safe." She stared into the fire before answering. "Lena." Her voice cracked. "My husband, he's coming. He always finds me." Cole's jaw tightened. He'd known men like that, men who thought cruelty was ownership. He'd once been one of them before his wife died, taking the light of him with her. He stood, went to the gun rack, and took down his rifle. The metallic sound made Lena flinch. "Don't," she whispered. "He'll kill you." Cole turned, eyes cold as steel. "He can try." Hours passed before the sound of hooves cut through the rain. A single horse. Heavy. Fast. Lena's cup slipped from her hands. Cole moved to the porch, lantern swinging in his grip. A man dismounted, slick with rain and arrogance. "You seen a woman come through here?" he demanded. "My wife. She's mine." Cole's voice was low, steady. "No one here belongs to you." The man reached for his gun, but Cole was faster. The crack of thunder swallowed the shot. The man fell into the mud, lifeless. When Cole turned back, Lena stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. You shouldn't have done that." He laid the rifle down gently. "Maybe not. But some things you just can't watch happen." She fell to her knees, sobbing, not out of grief, but release. Cole walked to her, his hand hesitating before resting on her shoulder. "Start over," he said softly. "Right here, if you want. You're safe now." Lena looked up at him, eyes trembling with something she hadn't felt in years, hope. The storm outside finally began to fade, but in that small cabin, something entirely new was born from the silence. For a long time, the only sound was the soft hiss of rain on the cabin roof. Lena sat there, staring into the flames as if they might tell her what to do next. Cole didn't speak. He'd lived long enough to know that silence could heal better than words sometimes. He simply set another log on the fire, poured her more coffee, and let her breathe. Her hands were still shaking as she held the mug. Every now and then her eyes flicked toward the door, where the storm wind groaned through the cracks. The man lying in the mud outside, her husband, seemed like a nightmare that might rise again if she blinked too long. Cole went out once more, coat drawn tight around him, and covered the body with a tarp. He'd deal with it come morning. Out here, men disappeared often enough that no one asked too many questions. When he came back, he didn't look at her, he just hung his wet hat on the peg and sat in the old chair near the fire. "You got any folks?" he asked after a while. She shook her head. "Not anymore. My mama passed when I was 14. My father sold the farm to pay debts, then drank himself to death before I turned 18. My husband found me workin' in a saloon. Said he'd save me." Cole nodded once. He knew how salvation sometimes came in cruel disguises. Been on the run long. 2 years, she whispered. Every time I thought I was free, he found me again. Didn't matter how far I went. He always did. Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You're free now. Lena looked at him sharply. You don't know that. The law don't ride this far, Cole interrupted. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual. Ain't nobody comin' up here without good reason. I'll bury him at dawn. You'll stay as long as you need. She looked away, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. Why would you do that for me? Cole stared into the flames. 'Cause once, someone did the same for me. The fire crackled. The rain slowed. She didn't ask him to explain, but something softened in her face as if she understood without needing the story. That night, she slept on the cot by the fire. Cole stayed up in his chair, rifle leaning against the wall, eyes on the shadows outside the window. He didn't sleep, not because he feared anyone coming, but because he hadn't kept company in years. Having someone in the house, even broken and frightened, stirred something he'd buried a long time ago. When dawn came, the rain had stopped. Mist rolled across the pastures, and the ground was soft underfoot. Cole dug the grave out by the cottonwoods, far enough from the barn, close enough that the wolves wouldn't find it. He didn't mark it. Lena stood at the edge of the field, wrapped in his old coat, watching him. She didn't speak, didn't cry this time. When he covered the last of the dirt, she whispered something too quiet to hear. Maybe it was a prayer. Maybe a goodbye. By breakfast, she was already trying to help, washing dishes, sweeping the floor, refusing to sit idle. Cole let her. He could see it was her way of reclaiming control. Days turned into a week. Then another. Lena spoke more, little by little, though her eyes still carried the look of someone expecting to run. Cole fixed fences, mended saddles, tended cattle, and every now and then caught her watching him from the porch. There was a softness in her gaze that unsettled him, not because he didn't want it, but because he didn't deserve it. One evening, she brought him a cup of coffee while he was sitting by the barn, watching the sunset burn red across the horizon. You don't talk much, she said quietly. He smiled faintly. Don't got much worth sayin'. That's not true. He turned to her. The wind caught her hair, lifting it gently. You sure about that? She nodded. When you speak, it feels like you mean it. He didn't know what to say to that. So he just looked back at the horizon and took a slow sip. After a pause, she asked, You said someone once helped you. Who was it? Cole hesitated. He hadn't spoken her name in years. My wife, Ellie. What happened? He swallowed. Fever took her. 5 winters back. She was my whole world. After she passed, I stopped talking to folks. Sold half the herd, kept to myself. Lena lowered her head. I'm sorry. He nodded. You remind me of her sometimes. The way you don't quit. Even when you oughta. Lena laughed softly for the first time. You think I don't quit? You saw me that night, Cole. I was ready to end it. He looked at her then, really looked. But you didn't. That counts for something. She turned away, blinking fast. I think you saved me. No, he said gently. You saved yourself. I just opened a door. From that night on, something began to shift between them. Not loud, not obvious. Just small things, a glance held too long, a word spoken too softly. Cole felt it in the way the cabin didn't feel so empty anymore. Lena started tending the garden that spring, planting wildflowers near the porch. He watched her work from the fence line, sunlight on her hair, and realized how long it had been since laughter lived on that land. Sometimes she hummed while she worked, old songs, half-remembered tunes that Ellie used to sing. The sound carried across the fields, chasing away ghosts he'd thought would never leave. But peace, Cole knew, was fragile. One evening, a rider came from town. Sheriff Miller, a man Cole knew since his youth, rode up slow, tipping his hat. Cole, he said, heard about a missing man. Fella named Roy Beckett. You seen or heard anything? Lena froze on the porch, her face turning pale. Cole didn't flinch. Can't say I have, he replied evenly. Ain't had visitors in a while. The sheriff studied him for a moment, eyes narrowing. You sure about that? Man's horse turned up dead 20 miles south. Looked like he was heading this way. Cole's jaw tensed. I said I ain't seen him. Miller nodded slowly. All right then. If you do, you let me know. As the sheriff rode away, Lena came down the steps, trembling. He knows, she whispered. He don't, Cole said, though his tone betrayed the weight in his chest. What if he comes back? Then he comes back, he said firmly. You ain't runnin' anymore. That night, neither of them slept. The silence between them was heavy again, like that first night, but this time, it wasn't fear that filled it. It was something deeper. At dawn, Cole found her standing by the fence, watching the light creep over the hills. Her hair was loose, her face calm. You think I should leave, she said quietly. He shook his head. No, I think you should live. She turned to him, eyes full of something fierce and uncertain. And you? I already lived my life, he said. I'm just making peace with what's left. Lena took a step closer. You call this peace? Cole's breath hitched when she reached out, fingers brushing his rough hand. It was, he said softly. Till you walked in. She smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. Then maybe I should stay. He didn't answer, just pulled her gently into his arms. For the first time in years, the world didn't feel so hollow. Weeks passed, and they began building something that resembled a life. She learned to ride, to mend fences, to brand calves. Cole taught her everything he knew, though half the time she learned faster than he expected. Sometimes, she caught him watching her, a hint of a smile under his beard. You look at me like I'm some miracle, she said once, teasing. You are, he replied simply. Summer brought warmth and laughter, and for a while, the past stayed buried. Until one morning, Cole spotted dust on the horizon, 3 riders this time. The sheriff wasn't alone. He knew before they reached the porch that it was about Roy. Miller dismounted, his face set. Cole, I need you to come with me. We found a grave out near your cottonwoods. Lena's heart dropped. Cole met the sheriff's eyes without blinking. Ain't denying it. He came here looking for her. I did what I had to. Miller sighed. I know you, Cole. You've never been a killer. Sometimes a man becomes one when there's no other way, Cole said quietly. Lena stepped forward. It was my fault. He came for me. Cole only protected. No, Cole interrupted, voice sharp. You don't say another word. This ain't on you. The sheriff looked between them. Law says it's murder, Cole. But I know how the law works out here. You want me to tell the judge it was self-defense? Cole nodded once. That'll do. When the riders left, the weight of it all settled heavy. He sat on the porch steps, staring at the empty fields. Lena knelt beside him. They'll come back for you, she said, her voice breaking. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I ain't runnin'. Tears streamed down her face. You can't stay here and wait for them to take you. He took her hand. Lena, I've been waitin' my whole life for something worth protectin'. I ain't about to walk away from it. She leaned into him, sobbing softly. I don't want to lose you. He stroked her hair gently. Then don't. Whatever happens, you keep livin'. Promise me that. She nodded, though her heart splintered with every word. Days passed. No one came. The sheriff must have kept his word, or maybe the law decided it wasn't worth the trouble. Either way, the ranch remained quiet. But something had changed in Cole, like he'd aged 10 years overnight. One morning, Lena found him sitting by the corral, hat in his lap, eyes on the rising sun. He smiled when he saw her. You remember what I said that first night? He asked. No one dies on my land. She nodded slowly. Well, he said with a faint grin, reckon I kept my word. Before she could ask what he meant, he closed his eyes, his hand going still in hers. The silence that followed was unbearable. Lena called his name, shook him, begged him to open his eyes, but Cole Maddox was gone. The man who had given her back her life had quietly surrendered his own. She buried him under the cottonwoods, beside the unmarked grave he had dug months ago. She carved a simple cross into the trunk with his knife. He saved her. The ranch became hers then, not by law, but by love. She stayed, just like he'd told her to. Years passed. The land flourished again. Wildflowers grew thick around the porch, and every spring, when the wind came soft through the valley, Lena would stand by the fence and whisper his name into it. Sometimes she swore she could hear him answer back, carried on the breeze, the voice of the man who had done the unthinkable, not out of vengeance but out of love.